this is Linda Carbonell from Walking Through Life TV show. I am here at the Public Safety Building in Hartford. Well, this is good, and I'm glad you guys had decided that you wanted to come forward and maybe talk to the people in the community about some concerns about the budget. I understand that the budget was voted down by the town members, the voters. So I think today is an opportunity to talk a little bit about what you do and what this building is for, the concerns about budgets. You know, if we could talk about that a little bit.
Well, Linda, thank you so much for coming out and meeting with us here today at the Public Safety Facility. We're very proud of this shared facility here, which is a tremendous cost savings to the taxpayer, as well as a great resource for sharing, or a great facility for sharing resources and cooperating in the delivery of public safety to the residents. And definitely the opportunity to talk about the budget. This is never an easy issue, and certainly as the public continues to, all of us, to struggle with the economy as it comes into recovery. This is a very important topic, and we're very grateful that you've given us the opportunity to talk about the great work that the fine men and women in our departments do. We're glad to be here with the fire chief today to do that.
Me too.
Thank you again, as the chief said, thank you for having us. And yeah, this is uncharted water for us. The town budget has never been defeated up until this year. So we're trying to figure out really what's the next step, and how can we ensure we continue to deliver a quality service to our citizens. And so hopefully this will help get a little bit of a message out.
Absolutely, and I think where I want to go with this to start with is how many of these towns in Hartford are there that you serve?
So the town, of course, is made up of the 5 villages.
There you go. 5
in which we
villages.
both are. That's who we provide service for. With the exception of there are 2 for medical. We provide a contract service to part of Sharon and part of Heartland.
Okay.
So beyond that, it really is the 5 villages that make up our community.
Okay.
And the uniqueness of those villages certainly drives the delivery of services. Some of the makeup from the policing aspect, and I'm sure that fire rescue is no different, but the diversity among the villages, and certainly the service that our residents expect, and some of the unique features, such as the interstates, the travel and tourism, things like that create different needs on the services. So the uniqueness of our villages really drives the delivery of services for us.
Well, let's talk a little bit about what was going to happen that you were asking for from the voters. The amount that the select board had put in for you guys, that was something that was okay for you?
So I think both of our initial budgets were presented and then tweaked a little, as they always are during the normal budget process, but it did include some additional staff. In fact, not new staff, the restoration of some positions, not only in public safety, but in public works and recreation, that would have been very helpful for the entire town operation. And as you know, with the vote going down, that's really one of the discussions now, is how much those people cost, how much they're needed, and what are we going to do without them if the voters ultimately decide not to fund those.
And some of those positions, though, are police and fire and EMT and dispatch. Do I understand that?
Yes, I think it's an important emphasis, or a point that I'd like to emphasize. There has been some confusion as to whether they're new positions or existing positions. And that's with the staff in public safety, be it the communications center, the police department, fire rescue, and emergency medical staff. They have been working with vacancies and going and covering those positions to help the town and its residents through the economic downturn, particularly in recovering from some of the significant increases in healthcare costs. So these are positions that have been vacant, that the departments have gone, all the departments across the town, but particularly on the public safety side, and have been filling through supplemental coverage, particularly with the use of overtime to fill those and ensure that we're able to meet minimum staffing demands.
That's another question that I had, was about the overtime. when they're working overtime, so they're paying time and a half, and if they hire somebody, then they're paying regular pay.
And of course, so on its face, it seems to make a lot of sense, and the problem is benefits are expensive, so once you add in,
Yeah.
but it goes so far beyond the dollar sign because it's about quality of life. When you
Exactly.
have employees working 20 to 30 to 40 hours of overtime a week, they're not with their families, they're not doing all those other things for their own health and well-being, and at the end of the day, it's just not sustainable to continue to fill full-time positions with overtime. It diminishes our quality of our life for our employees.
Absolutely. I'm glad you said that, because that is such an important need.
We can do it on short windows.
Yeah.
We can't do it for 2 and 3 and
And
4
how
years.
long has this been going on that we were going to bring this to the townspeople? How long has this been planned?
Well, we've seen well, you got to remember, our first reduction in staffing occurred in 2008 when the recession started. Then we saw another reduction in 2010, another reduction in 2011. So we've been losing people for 6 years now, and the board had basically adopted a 3 or 4 year plan to restore positions.
Yeah.
So when people say phase them in, well, the board is phasing them in there, but we need 6 a year for the next 3 years to get back really to where we were pre-2008.
Especially where White River, Hartford, all of that is growing. I mean, you've got more businesses here, you've got more residents, you've got a lot more people here. You're dealing with a very serious drug problem. You've got, a lot of people, a lot of businesses that need to count on safety workers. Absolutely. And I totally agree that I think if you're working too many people overtime, it's a health risk for them and for us, if we think about it. For us too, it is.
Sleep deprivation among public safety employees, because of the way that shifts are worked, it's called the silent killer.
Yeah.
And over an extended period of time, it really takes a toll on an individual's health. And certainly that is a concern to us. But really from a cost perspective, a dollars and cents piece, just with our overtime alone that was budgeted this past year, and there's always a certain amount of overtime that is unavoidable in the public safety sector. You run into a crisis situation, you run into a disaster or a large investigation or a large accident or hazard that requires mitigation, you're going to have those types of things. But as Chief Locke said, an extended period where you're using that to fill regular positions, it does tend to take a toll on you. But with our allocation just this past fiscal year, we could almost fill 2 full-time positions with what was spent.
And that's what people aren't seeing, is that you could almost reach it with just that. How many positions are we looking at that we want to fill?
So on the fire side, the proposed budget would restore 1 of my 2 vacancies. And then I'll let the chief talk to on the police side.
From one position for us would be a police officer, a uniformed police position. And what we hope to do with that is backfill a patrol position and take a seasoned law enforcement officer, send them on to investigator school, and increase our staffing in the investigations section by 1 person. But again, that's an existing hole that would need to be filled, so we would backfill the patrol section. The communications section, which supports both fire, rescue, EMS, and the police side, also has a dispatcher position that has been left unfilled. I think it's important to understand that in addition to providing communication services, they're the primary public safety answering point for our town as well as several other towns, and provide primary dispatch service for police, fire, rescue, and EMS in those townships. So in addition to providing an emergency service that's very critical, there's also a revenue portion of that comes back to the town. The communications section is almost 2/3 to about 3/4 self-funded because of the revenue.
And it's interesting that their staff is so thin that they are filling a full-time position with overtime and part-time because they need the 2 dispatchers on.
Yeah.
So they couldn't cut the slot out. So when they lost the person, they're filling a full-time employee slot with part-timers and overtime.
So it just makes sense to
Yeah,
hire.
I mean, the only savings there is a little bit of healthcare dollars. And what you're really paying in the overtime, it really far exceeds, and that is one of those cases where it really makes it's zero cost to change that back to really a full-time position.
And I think that's so important to hear, for us to hear, is that the cost makes so much more sense to hire rather than to work overtime, work the officers and everybody overtime, because you're not only dealing with the dollars of that, but you're also dealing with the health of the people that are doing that. So,
Yes.
and I just think that's number one that people should be concerned about, you know? And I have always thought that people maybe in the community don't exactly see the things that go on with you guys. What are some of the things that you do here that, you know, the officers do and the EMT do, and I know you've got training and all that kind of stuff. People maybe not hear that or don't actually see what
I think it's, so from the fire perspective, or fire and medical, because everyone is cross-trained, so while we're only running 5 to 7 true emergencies a day, much of the day is made up with prevention activities or training or preparation for the next event, whatever the next event would be. So the world or the fire business is very different today than what it used to be. And we look at when there is a fire as a failure of our system because we didn't do a better job with prevention. So for us, it's very much different than what the police were, where they're out in the field, where you often see them out in the field doing their prevention activities. You may not see us as a parent.
And on the police side, and just to add on as well, there's a regulatory piece that comes with the prevention side of it, but with inspections and things like that the fire personnel do with all of the businesses that provide services here to the town, the hotels and things like that. There's some regulatory piece with the fire department that goes into that with the prevention side that is very time consuming.
Yeah. I know you also do residents too. You go out and check people's.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
On the law enforcement side of things, and a lot of folks always refer to crime, and particularly the serious crime, the things that receive attention on primetime television, on newscasts. And we're pretty fortunate. I think that we all know that the town of Hartford is a very safe place. But it doesn't mean that we're absent of crime, and more recently the conditions that cause crime and very serious crime. I'm very pleased to say that starting my 4th week now with the department as the chief, the police officers here do a fantastic job of being proactive. Over the last 3 years they've increased their proactive efforts, and I think that they've made a very good impact. We've seen a slight decrease in the thefts and burglaries that sometimes fund illicit drug activities. The problem is, though, what we're seeing, it impacts the police side and fire rescue, EMS, and communications, is the number of persons in our community that are at risk. And some of that happens because we have a large hospital here in town, the Veterans Administration Hospital. We have 2 interstates, the train station, the bus station, that bring folks to this area to receive services. The state and the town have located a number of services here. So we have a lot of folks that are, like the rest of the nation, that are in need. They're in crisis, they suffer a mental illness and impairment. Some of that is substance abuse driven. We've seen a 5-fold increase in our drug offenses over the last 3 years. We've seen a 2.5-fold, almost 3-fold increase in the number of interactions that we're having with persons that are suffering from a mental illness or impairment. You're not going to find those numbers in the serious crime index that the FBI has. But rest assured, they have something to do with the increase in our crimes against persons. And if left unattended, they result in suicides, an increase in aggravated assaults, and they're very risky for the first responders that come and provide the service to them. I've spent several shifts riding around with the police officers, and excluding last night where I came out to help fill in for a need for a supervisor that we had on the overnight shift, The last 3 shifts that I work ended with our police officers and Chief Locke's medical personnel responding to a person in crisis and someone that needed to go to a hospital. They're very labor intensive, they take time, and if left unattended will lead to serious crime and unfortunately even fatalities. The families that are involved in those cases, they want to make sure that the public safety resources are there to provide that service to their family.
Absolutely, and I was going to say, one other thing about that with people with mental illness. I have witnessed both the fire department, police department, myself, with some of my friends, I guess, that have this problem. And the training, I know you guys have training for that specifically, and the care that you give these people, it's just, it really touches my heart to see that. And I just want to say, for both of you, thank you very much for getting yourself trained in that area, so you know how to not only approach, but also help.
Well, thank you. I think we try to look at every customer as it's our grandmother or our mother,
Exactly.
and that or father, because that sets the frame of reference. How would you want your family member to be treated? And we're lucky that we have a staff that gets that,
Yep.
and wants to do the right thing. And it makes our jobs much easier.
It's like I said, I just see so much caring coming from all of you, and it really means a lot to me.
When it comes to someone's life, Linda, you can't put a price tag on
No,
that.
you can't. Yep. And it's nice to have, when you're suffering like that too, it's nice to have somebody that truly cares, that you can actually hear they care.
Well, and there lies this whole battle with trying to figure out where that balance is, where the community's expectations are, because right now, in our minds, the community expectation is when they call for a police officer, they call for a fire truck, or they call for an ambulance, that we show up in a timely fashion, we help with the problem, and life gets better. We can't do that without enough people, we can't do that without enough money, and at the end of the day, the citizens need to tell us where that balance is, and we will meet that. But right now, the expectation is at one level, and it's our job to deliver that service, and so our boundaries are being pushed on the availability to deliver that service within the funds that we're given, or at least it's potentially there.
So let's hope that this next town meeting they have, people will have seen this and be able to really get educated on this. So they can actually experience what you're talking about, because I don't think at the last town meeting maybe they didn't understand.
Well, and it's tough. It's really tough to understand what the voters' message was, with the exception of perhaps they feel like they're overtaxed, and understandably. So hopefully that day there will be some good dialogue, and we can really help to answer those questions. And then at the end of the day, we're going to deliver the service that they tell us they want us to deliver. But and that's as simple as it really gets down to.
I just believe myself that public safety is not an area that you don't fund, or you take certain things from there. If you need something as a community, we're responsible to be able to get that to you.
The men and women of the Hartford Police Department are committed to providing the highest level of public safety services, and doing so in a manner that is cost effective and efficient for the public. Our staff is always seeking out newer, better ways to do things, using their initiative, and we encourage that, to streamline processes. But at the end of the day, as the demands of service continue to increase and the safety risks to the public, safety risks to the personnel increase, we're unfortunately left with the question that we have today, and we need those positions, we need to fill those positions. From a safety standpoint.
And really, both of our trend lines are going up for calls for service, and our minimum staffing, or the percentage of the time where our minimum staffing is going down, and that's a mix for disaster in our business. Absolutely. And it's a roll of the dice when someone's going to get hurt, and unfortunately, we are risk managers. I'd say we're both risk averse, but at the end of the day, that's what will occur.
For me, it's an honor to support the police department and fire department. And I would say that to the community too. You think about what these people do. Just think about it, a little tax, at least we'd be safe,
Well, and I think, in the taxpayers' defense, they feel like they're over pressurized, and but when we run the numbers, most people pay more for their smartphone per month than they do for the fire department or the police department. So on a standard home, it's $45 a month on your tax bill for the fire department, $45 a month for the police department. So when you boil it down to what it really costs you for our services, we're very economical to have available.
And another thing too is some of the issues that have come up everywhere, which is I've heard that Vermont's prisons are going to be closing, or one of some of them, and the state hospital is not efficient. So with all of that, you've got more crises happen, I'm sure.
I think the trend nationwide has been to push the funding responsibilities down to local government. And that's a nationwide issue. It's no different here in the state of Vermont. And as everyone at the federal and the state level try to find ways to fund their priorities, it's easy to look to local government to make up the difference. And frequently that's what's happening. As the mental health facilities have deregulated and downsized, as healthcare facilities have done that, we're seeing more folks that are treated in the community, treated as outpatients. And when they're receiving that treatment, that works well. And it fits very well with the model that's there. The problem is, and when we get called, and I think Chief Locke mentioned it earlier, it's when someone is in crisis. It's when they've not been able to access their health care or they've not taken that medicine. And that's at a point where it's very critical for that individual. It's a critical time for their family and the public. And it's a very dangerous and critical time for the first responders that are there. We're committed to working with all of our partners in the community at all levels of government, including the nonprofits, to help continue that service delivery and monitor those populations. But at the end of the day, it still takes staffing to do that. And I think that's the challenge that we're up against at this point. And knowing that the continued downsizing and deregulation and the movement of some of those responsibilities down to the local level, and we're even seeing it from an investigative standpoint, where we have always been able to rely on strong regional partnerships at the state and federal level. They're having to expand their regions, and it's leaving more responsibility for us with some of the smaller investigations at the local level, which is why we're looking to use that backfilled position as an investigator so that we can focus on some of the street level issues here in Hartford.
Right, and it's the same with the drug issues too. That obviously must come with more demand and services from you.
Yes. And oftentimes on the police side, the things that are missed when you turn on your TV at night and you watch the Blue Bloods or one of the popular shows about law enforcement, they don't show you that the bulk of what we do, or a large part of what we do, is case preparation, reporting. There's a tremendous amount that goes into that, and it is very time consuming. So you have those moments of peak demand, moments of high pressure situations, active physical activity, and or providing service to the public. And then on the backside of that, there's the administrative piece that goes along with it to make sure that the process works, and whether it's the court system, follow up with some of the other service providers, or managing the risk that is attendant to our job and taking care of our staff and the public, the public information and education piece. It's all part of it, and it's time consuming.
Life would be grand if we could schedule our emergencies, so we knew we could stack our staffing up to meet the demand, and then, there'd be no calls this day when we were running late. But unfortunately, it ebbs and flows, and it's really busy to really quiet, and that's just the nature of our work. So it's our responsibility to provide enough resources to handle it. And that's that line that's a knife edge we're always trying to find.
And I think that this show is very important for the community to see. And I also see that maybe there could be future shows where we could talk a little bit more about this stuff and educate the community on things that are happening now.
Sure.
And I think that would be a great opportunity. And I know I'm about ready to wrap up the show, but I want to make sure that I can give each one of you a moment to give a message to the community.
Sure. Well, if I get the opportunity to speak directly to the citizens, I'd say thank you. Thank you for, I've worked for this community for 23 years. It's been a wonderful place to raise a family, certainly a wonderful place to work. And I understand the pain in your pocketbook. Unfortunately, you also have an expectation of me to deliver a quality service to you. I can't always do that, and so we implore you to support the budget, support the additional personnel we've requested. We hear your pain, but we certainly would appreciate your supporting the budget for us. Thank you.
I too, I'm honored to serve the residents of Hartford, and I'm excited about joining the community and working with the residents and our partners in keeping our quality of life what has made this such a great destination for so many people, and enhancing it. Very, very grateful to do that. And in my oath that I take to do those things, I also have an oath to be forthright with the public and communicate what our needs are. And that's why I'm very grateful to have had the opportunity to hopefully answer some questions here today on exactly what things it is that we intend to do with the money that's allocated to us. It is the public's money, and they do have a right to understand. Both of our departments, we also have ride-along programs. So anyone that's interested, we offer them the opportunity to come join a member of our staff and see firsthand for themselves the great work that our personnel do. And again, I just can't thank you enough for the opportunity to explain the circumstances and answer questions.
Well, and I appreciate you guys doing this too, because I think it is important for the community. And Walking Through Life is all about educating and helping people understand things that they may not understand. And I think that's why I think this is so important. And I just want to thank you guys very much for doing this. And I know we're gonna go and get a little bit of pictures and stuff like that about what's happening in the building. And I want to invite you, either one of you or both of you, again, to do another Walking Through Life show. I think it'd be awesome. And I also encourage the audience too that if you have any concerns or answers or questions or anything like that, that you can email me at walklife@comcast.net. And I don't know, can we give your email information?
I think they're all right on the town website at www.hartford-vt.org, and links to all departments or question and answers for the town.
Nice.
But certainly you can call the public safety facility at any time, and I think we both would welcome any calls.
And I'm looking forward to the ride-along.
Sounds great.
Okay, well, this is Linda Carver, and we're saying goodbye today for Walking Through Life. We'll catch you on the next one. Bye-bye.